Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Welcome, everyone. Yes, friends, Tiger Claw Radio is back again. It's that time of the week. I'm your host, Critical Failure. We're going to talk some video games. We're going to play some chiptunes. I went over to archive.org and I started scraping for chiptunes that had come out quite a while ago. And there's a lot of stuff over there that I haven't checked out, which was pretty cool. I also revisited the Grand Theft Auto series this past week. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and how a couple of those games have become rare for whatever reason. But anyway, let's kick things off with a chiptune. We're going to head over to archive.org. And our first track for the day is Pontinus Pooh Boy Technical Chaos Demo Synth Chiptune Pooh Boy 2. Okay, it's a jumble of words and letters, but decent chiptune. And this came out back in 2010. So we're talking about the 8-bit collective era of chiptune. Stick with us. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. More next. Those archive.org tracks are of course free, so check out the notes to pick up a link to that one so you can grab the MP3. Alright, so the big highlight in gaming this past week for me was Grand Theft Auto. Over on Steam, back in 2011, it was during one of the sales, I picked up what was at the time noted as the Grand Theft Auto Complete Pack. I don't even think Grand Theft Auto 5 had come out yet. But what made it special was that it included the original two, like, top-down 2D games. Now, quick side note, those games have been free for a while. Once upon a time, I don't know if they still do, but Rockstar offered those two games, GTA and GTA 2, for free directly on their website. And I remember trying to download them, but I couldn't because they wanted, like, a lot of personal information in order to allow the download. However, other people picked it up, they patched it and released it. So GTA and GTA 2 have been free for a long time. But back in 2011, they had Steam entries, but you couldn't buy them directly. The only way to get a hold of them was to buy the complete pack. So it had 1 and 2, and it had GTA 3, and then Vice City and San Andreas, and then GTA 4, and that was everything. So I bought it without thinking too much, just because I wanted the original GTA. I had it a long time ago. I used to play it on the PlayStation, and I remember, I want to say I had it for the PC, but I don't know if that's true or not. I can't remember if I just saw it in the store, and then my mother threw it out shortly after when she threw out all my video games. But I remember it for the PC. I remember a buddy of mine had the demo, which was just the first city, which is the best city in my opinion. But yeah, people take a big sloppy dump all over those first couple GTA games, but man, I love them. Oh my gosh. So much fun. The first game, I had some difficulty getting it running on a modern computer. I had to patch it, but I mean, that wasn't too bad. But the thing was, shortly after I got this pack back in 2011, the first couple games were removed from the Steam library altogether. And they've been gone for a long time now. So I returned to the Steam entry looking for patches and advice on how to get that first game running. And apparently it's become one of the more sought after games for Steam collectors. There's a guy in the forums who was trying to buy a usable Steam key for the first game for $200 or something. It's like, man, I wish I could transfer my copy, because I definitely paid $12 for it, and it's definitely free. I would just sell my Steam copy for $200, then go get a copy that's free, that's patched somewhere else, and there you go. Then it'd be a non-Steam game. But that aside, it was a good time returning to that game. The first couple GTA games were the only games in the GTA series that ever needed to have a map. I remember specifically the first game, you had to it came with a paper map when you got it on the PlayStation, and that laid out the city. And when you were driving, you had an arrow that would point you to your destination. But the city was laid out in such a way that following the arrow directly was not always the best route. So you had to have a map. And playing it now, I had the multi-monitor set up, right? So I had the game on my main monitor in front of me, and then just to the left, I had a dedicated monitor that just had the map up. Yeah, it's good stuff, man. One thing I don't have on my quote-unquote complete GTA collection, though, London 1969. Oh yeah, the London expansion for the first game. You remember this? It was this was billed on the PlayStation as the first ever console expansion pack for a game. So it was not a DLC per se. It was a standalone. It was a standalone expansion pack that you couldn't play if you didn't have the original game, which looking back is bonkers. But I was excited at the time. That's another one. I remember playing it. Excuse me. I remember playing it a couple of times before my mom threw it out. But that one wasn't entirely my mom's fault. I think it's just at the time I was more interested in just the vanilla first game. But yeah, I would really like to play the old London expansion again. A buddy of mine ended up getting a bunch of tattoos in his adult years. And one of the tattoos he got early on was that guy from the London expansion, like the advertisements. It was like I guess it was supposed to be like a London police officer or something like that. I don't know. But he got that tattooed on his leg, and I think that's hilarious because he was 18 at the time, and now he's in his 30s. And that, despite being, Grand Theft Auto, a big-time franchise that everyone knows, is essentially, an advertisement for an expansion pack that's become an obscurity over time. So what are you going to do? Sucks to be that guy, I guess. So I'm thinking back, and I can't remember if this is fan casting or not, but over the past week, I recorded a few bits on my phone. So let's go there now. You're listening to TCR. Welcome, everyone, to a Vancast. It is Sunday night, 9:51 p.m. It is 72 degrees outside. It's nice. It's a cloudy night. Okay, so the stars aren't out, but feels good. It's calm. It's quiet. We are wrapping up the weekend. This has been a heck of a dad weekend. Lots of stuff going down. Been really busy. I usually have a couple of breaks, in the middle of the day. Saturday I got a couple hours stretch, and Sunday I got a couple hours stretch. That's like my weekend. Both of those periods were just gone this weekend, which sucked. But some cool stuff did happen. Particularly, there was a sale on the Steams. I haven't bought a good Steam game in a while. I'd kind of been out of Steam for the last little bit. But I've been playing like my Ambernick and the Pow Kitty, and I've been playing ROMs and digging through games in my physical collection, whatever. But there was like a sale on Japanese-inspired games or whatever. Long story short, River City Ransom, long-standing favorite of mine. I managed to get a hold of a River City Ransom spin-off game. What was it called? Like Stay Cool Kobayashi or something like that. Supposedly not a great game. Like a simple little, like, one-button kind of beat-em-up sort of thing. But the source material is amazing, so if it's okay, then that's great. And it went down to like $2.50, so I was like, all right, I'll take one of those, please. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I have not had the chance to play it because when would I have time to do anything this weekend, which kind of sucks. But that was cool to see, even after all this time, and all the complaints I have. Once in a while, something still shows up on Steam that's like, yeah, I'll get me a copy of that. That's fine. And that was pretty cool. But apart from that, it's been it. I mean, last week when we did one of these, I talked about playing Warzone, WWF Warzone on the Game Boy and enjoying it. But I realized I don't actually own WWF Warzone on the Game Boy, so I had to get rid of it. I stopped playing that so that I could stick to the No Piracy Challenge, because technically a ROM I don't own. To the point where I actually went on eBay and I started combing through cartridges, just trying to price it to see what it would cost. It's like $6-7. Not bad for a Game Boy cart. I considered it. This is a game I wanted to play just a little bit. I'd get myself a copy and hold on to it, play it a little bit. Yeah, very attainable game, which is, it's always, regardless of what you think of Warzone, it's always cool to come across a game that you'd be interested to acquire or for whatever reason, and then you go to look it up, and then it's actually like a reasonably priced game. That is a really awesome feeling, because there's a period of time, and I guess it depends on what system you're into, where that just was never the case. If you're big into RPGs and you like the PS1, you're going to be disappointed an awful lot. If you're big into shooters and you like Sega, then you're going to be disappointed a lot. If you're big into the Sega Saturn and you like anything, you're going to be disappointed a lot. All that stuff is mad, bananas, in pajamas, expensive. But this is cool. This is apparently a WWF Warzone. I can mash buttons for all I want. Alright, how we doing here? Alright, so what I'm actually doing right now is I did yard work for like 4.5 hours today with my father-in-law, which was a good time, but it was really tiring. So I am treating myself to some Crack Donald's. So I'm going to have to actually pause this so I can put in my order. I completely forgot. Morrowind, right? Monday Night Morrowind has returned if you're a supporter. I played some Morrowind, which it took getting the game back open and exploring to see where my save file was at, because one thing I did not want to do was do like the beginning missions again. When you play Morrowind and you roll into Balmora, you got to join all the guilds, and every guild has like a series of low-level quests that they want you to finish up. Thankfully, my save file was like right at the part where all that was done, and you're ready to really start doing some things. So that's been pretty cool. So I did some filming for Monday Night Morrowind, which I haven't done in a long time. And that was great. Because all of my old mods and stuff were still there. I never like uninstalled it. It was still installed. So that was a good time because I had a nice house mod and a couple other things put in. So that's cool. It's good times. But yeah, that's been pretty much my week. I play games on the portable devices when I can. And one thing that I've been enjoying on the portable devices more than anything is playing the old Game Boy games, because all of the devices I own can do it. Like, I don't even know how to pronounce this, but I think it's Hakanyo Alien. I used to call it Hakani Alien when I was a kid, but something tells me that that's not pronouncing it right. I have that on the Game Boy, so I have that on all my emulation devices as well. Awesome game. And what's weird is like that one got like a Steam port, like a weird Steam port, because it's not on any other console, or at least it wasn't for years and years. And the Steam port is like $15 or something. It's like, get out of here. Nobody's paying $15 for this game. Weird. I don't know. But I dusted off the Game Boy game, and it was good times. That was one of the ones that my older brother had when we were kids. He had a Game Boy, back in the early 90s, and I did not. So I would play his machine. Oops, hang on. Here we go. Hey, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. All right. Okay. Curbside is the best. Yeah, so I would play his Game Boy, and ironically, I didn't put this together until just now, but he used to have, my older brother had like a fanny pack, a black fanny pack that he kept his Game Boy in and all his games, and he acquired a pretty hefty collection of Game Boy games because he wasn't buying them in box. He would go down to this place called the Toy Exchange and buy used Game Boy games. We didn't have eBay at the time, or if we did, we didn't have access to it. There was no buying online. We just went to the secondhand shop, and that was the best we could do. And I think the Game Boy games were like $10 a piece or something at the time, because the Game Boy was still like it was still what was in, so that was just what it was, a fair price. So this Hakani Alien game he got, and it was always like a B card game, like a mid-tier kind of game, what we played in between the Marios and the Zeldas. But this was one. And I wish I could remember what else was in that fanny pack. It was like this, and then Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and then like some weird off-road game that I remember being really cool, but I don't really remember much about. Yeah, so I've acquired what I'm going to call one of the fanny pack series games for the Game Boy. Because we used to play that thing in, I want to say in my treehouse, but I don't know if it qualifies as a treehouse. See, we had this tree that was like right on the property line, and it hung over, and we nailed in like a couple of planks of wood onto this onto two branches in this tree, and we could sit on. It was like a platform, so it was kind of like a tree house, but it wasn't a house. It was just like a little, platform, and that was pretty much it. And I used to sit up there and play Game Boy with my older brother, when I could, because it was mostly just him. But yeah, it's really good times, man. That takes me back in a big way. Well, that said, I've got some food to eat here, and then I got to go and get some rest. So I'm going to send you all back to the studio. See you there. Back in the studio again. We got one more quick one for you before we switch over to the fail bag. Let's go there now. Yeah, okay. Can we talk about this fishing vacation game that our good buddy Hemrock pointed out? All right, so just a quick recap. I like my dad games. One of my favorite games on the Game Boy is a little slot machine game from Japan. Just a slot machine, that's it. Simplest game in the world. No title screen, no nothing. You turn it on, there's the slots. He was like, hey man, got this fishing game that I found on the Webernet. Looks pretty dad game to me. Awesome. Game Boy styled. By that I mean, the Game Boy color palette and then a 1:1 aspect ratio screen. Great. Okay, let's give it a shot. Apparently, it's like a fishing, like a horror themed fishing game jam entry. So it's a game that follows a narrative. There is a fishing mini game in it that it centers around, but that's a game that got weird fast, and I don't know how else to explain it except that I ended up playing through it 3 different times, and that's one we have to walk through together on YouTube on TCTV. Definitely worth a playthrough. But I don't know if I'd call that a dad game. But big thanks to Hemrock for pointing that out. It is a cool game, and it's out there for free, so definitely worth checking out. Fishing Vacation. Yeah, it's like a Game Boy fishing game crossed with Clock Tower. One of the later Clock Tower games where it got weird. Weirder, even. That's all I have on Fishing Vacation. Alright, I'll see you back in the studio. Back again in the studio. I just want to take a quick minute to thank the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program still. These gentlemen give their resources to make sure we come back every single week. And in return, I offer them early access to the show. Show gets finished on Wednesday around or so. It goes up, and then they get to hear it 4 days before everyone else. On top of that, Monday Night Morrowind has returned. If you like Morrowind, we hang out and play Morrowind every Monday on the Patreon, so it's good times. And finally, in tradition here on TCR, I read their names off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen, and they are Hemrock, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and Eric Kentroller. Thank you, gentlemen, so much, and I hope you're enjoying the party. I can't believe I forgot to mention GTA San Andreas. It's the first time I'd ever played it. I knew, some of the memes, oh, here we go again. I've seen those everywhere on the internet, but I never actually sat down and played that game, because when I go back to when Grand Theft Auto, the 3 series, that and Vice City and then San Andreas, when those were new, I played 3 a lot, because that was a landmark game. That was the game where GTA kind of got its 3D legs. And then I played Vice City a couple of times at a buddy's house. And people said San Andreas was the best. They said it's the best game. And not only had I never played it, at one point I had a San Andreas guide, like a map guide book that I'd picked up at the used bookstore and just kind of hung around on my shelf for a while until I finally got rid of it. So it's been years. And remember that I got this, collection on Steam in 2011. So this has been in my collection for 10 years. Talk about a backlog. I gotta say though, I liked it. I'm a big fan of the Saints Row series, and when I play San Andreas, I can see some of the things that Saints Row then did better, first introduced into video games or Grand Theft Auto or whatever, like the ability to go buy tattoos and stuff like that. One thing I didn't like about it, you have to eat and exercise. Because if there's one thing I want to do in my fantasy game, it's eat right and exercise and make sure I don't get fat. But yeah, the story has been engrossing, and when it comes to these sorts of narrative games, a good story can make a lot of problems just go by the wayside. If it's hung on a compelling story, then you can really get away with an awful lot. And it is. I've only put about 2 hours into it at this point, so not a whole lot else I can say apart from that, except that I was pleasantly surprised. And I can't believe I sidestepped around this game for this long. So yeah, that's been a good time. I find the GTA games, the later ones, easier to play on the PC. Like I played GTA 3 on a PlayStation 2, and using the sticks and stuff to aim and do, particularly like the gunfighting, it was just really awkward. And then when I revisited it on the PC later in life, I found some of those stages that I was like getting repeatedly killed on, I would just plow through them just because I finally got to use mouse and keyboard. Yeah, so I find those games easier now than when they first came out, which is good. Good times. I may have to go back and revisit Vice City again too, because I remember everyone loved Vice City, but I didn't. I didn't think it was great because I kept dying a lot and I couldn't get anywhere and I got frustrated. But now that I am older and less ridiculous, or more ridiculous, depending on how you look at it, that's definitely on my to-play list for what that's worth. All right, we're nearly 27 minutes in. Let's go back to archive.org and get another chiptune before we hit the fail bag. Ponks, Ponks, is the name of that artist. Is this artist or is that album name? I have to think it's the artist name, but it's a little bit difficult the way they have it set up on archive.org because there's no, artist name by Ponks. Okay. There's no standardized convention about how these things go, so, yeah. Can't always tell. But that is the opening track off of a 5-song EP. Clearly the LSDJ sound. Clearly the Game Boy sound chip. Something that when I listen to chiptunes today, it's almost like that's fallen out of fashion because I don't hear that as much as I used to. That was the dominating sound back in the 8-bit collective days, which leads me to think this might be old. And yeah, it says it was added back in 2011, so that makes sense. Heck of a track. I really dig that one. I'm going to have to grab that entire EP and check out the rest of it later on. All right, boys and girls, it's failbag time. This is a little TCR is a little operation. It's just you, it's just me here. That's pretty much it. So if you want to interact with the show, if you know me personally, you can shoot me an email. Otherwise, hit me up on YouTube, leave a comment, and any of that stuff's viable to be read on the air. So let's check out what we got. Oh, actually, before we go any further, the Retro Junk Box. Who's up for the Retro Junk Box? Because it made a second round. It got stuck at my place for quite some time. But it made a second round with like a short list of people. It's basically just Hemrock, me, and Desm, and that was it. Does anybody want to jump in on this thing again? Because I got a bunch of stuff here that I could put in it. I'm ready to do like a third round of the Retro Junk Box. So if that sounds like something you'd want to do, you have to pay shipping for to get it to the next person, and that's the price of entry. And since it's a medium flat rate box, that puts it at about $15. I think it was like $15.50 when I did it or something. And the way it works is the box is full of stuff. It's full of games and toys and whatever. And you can take out stuff and you can put stuff in. And then once you have adjusted the contents, you send it off to the next person. And that's pretty much it. And I've got some cool stuff from the Retro Junk Box. And I've been able to unload some really fun things as well. So let me know. Let me know if you're interested, and we can set it up and get you in the rotation. But for now, let's head over to YouTube and see what kind of comments we got. Desm101 is the first person to check in last week, and he says, the last couple of months I've been coming to the conclusion I am a casual gamer. There are some times here and there where I spend more than a couple hours on a game. However, the majority of the time, I'll randomly pick up a game on my mind, play it for about 15 minutes, and then go do something else, lol. Yeah, you know what? I think that's probably the disposition of the well-adjusted gaming adult. We're busy. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Good to hear from you, brother. Thanks for checking in, man. Hope your life is good. Death Adder writes, the comment about Sony and Microsoft having self-destruct devices on their consoles is a little bit messy to type out, and I'm not a master wordsmith, so it's worth using a search engine to look up for this week's show. Just look up PS4 C-bomb. The too long didn't read version is that when Sony's service goes down, the PS4 turns into a paperweight. It won't even play disc-based games. You'd have to hack your PS4 to get it working. Microsoft has a similar paperweight scenario, but I think, emphasis on I think, it has been connected to the Microsoft servers at least once. If it's been connected to the Microsoft servers at least once, it'll work. If I'm not mistaken, and I believe this nightmare of future gaming affects the PS3, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X, Xbox 360 is not affected, as it's too cool for school. On a more fun side note, as much as I wish Mecha Menace and Alex Swingle would get along, I think if we ever all met up, a wrestling match with Mecha Menace in a Mecha Godzilla bodysuit versus Alex Swingle in a King Kong bodysuit would draw huge ratings. We could build a miniature city for them to destroy and everything. Swingle says the big question is who's the actual heel in the match. Would we have one of those rare heel versus heel matches? Death Adder, heel versus heel match. Balzac is the only babyface left in the company. I love it. I'd want to see that. All right, so let's talk about... Oh, actually, you know what? What did he say? PS4 C-bomb. Let's pause real quick so I can take a look at this. Okay. So they've added a CMOS to the motherboards of these systems, and the article that I found out can all be boiled down to this one paragraph. What happens when the Sony game servers go down? If the server cannot be reached, or if it's been taken down, games and DLC will not work and be unable to boot. In the case of the PS4, the console will also be unable to play games from a physical disc. As for the PS5, while some physical games can be played, the results are mixed. That is insanity. It's insanity. It's interesting that when we look back, how video game companies early on did not know video games were gonna do what they were gonna become what they are now, right? Back in the Atari era, it was like, oh, this video games thing is gonna pass, right? And so there was no need for planned obsolescence. Obsolescence was just on the horizon. It was gonna come. So there was no reason to worry about having to compete with yourself in the future. But now they know better, don't they? Now this message will self-destruct in 10 seconds, Jim. Thanks, Sony. I would also like to point out that this is a huge benefit of the doubt. It could just be absolutely terrible hardware design. Because I know they're a big company, and they have testers and stuff, but they're not immune to making terrible hardware choices. So it might not be on purpose, right? They could just be that incompetent. But that is hilarious. The article that I'm looking at now says the feature was introduced to try and stop people from taking advantage of trophies. Just remove trophies. Just get rid of the whole trophy feature if it's gonna, cause this much trouble. It's not worth bricking someone's PS4. Death Adder, brother. Hope you're doing well. Oh, he goes on to say, I rented, owned, or emulated every 8 and 16-bit pro wrestling game. They are all broken button mashers, other than NES Pro Wrestling, sadly. Lol. There is a Capcom fighting game with pro wrestling paint on it called Saturday Night Slam Masters. That I did enjoy, though. It's worth a shot. Gaming Beast replies, got the best mayor of Metro City based on Jesse Ventura in it. Mike Hager. Vote for him. He'll clean up the city by himself and a friend, quite literally. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we didn't get better wrestling games, back like when we were close to like the golden age of wrestling. But it is what it is. Explain to me what it is that people love so much about pro wrestling on NES, though. Is it because it's button combination based, so that way it's not it doesn't rely on button mashing? That might be good, but the problem is that makes it harder to get into, because then you have to know button combinations in order to really do it. That's the problem I have with WWF Warzone on the PS1. It was great when I knew all the button combos, but I can't revisit it now because I don't know any of them, so it's basically unplayable. Yeah, I don't know. What are you gonna do? I don't know. I'll have to check it out. Because you're not the only one that favors pro wrestling on the NES. Not by a long shot. Mecha Menace writes, I hope Swingo feels better someday. Oh boy, here we go. 49 minutes and 43 seconds in. Metroid 2 had a remake on 3DS. Duh. Yeah, I know that, but think about the time difference between the two, okay? The Game Boy version came out what year? The 3DS remake came out what year? So during the elapsed time, which was a long time, the canon sequel, which was recognized by the rest of the franchise, was on the original Game Boy. But let's get back to the comment. In regards to some GBW sequels, prequels on console games, Kid Icarus on GBW is a sequel to the NES. Kirby is a weird series on the GBW. Kirby is a good example, actually. I forgot about that. Debuting with Dreamland 1, adding powers with the NES, and then Dreamland 2, taking those NES added concepts back to the Game Boy W. What is GBW? Is that Game Boy White? Ninja Gaiden on the GBW is actually a prequel to Shadow the Ninja on the NES, and it was renamed it was renamed to Ninja Gaiden to take advantage of the entire franchise. Given more time, I think I could think about the true sequels and prequels, not simply ports like the remixed Mega Man and Adventure Island series. One more. I know it's not GBW, but Metal Gear Solid came out on the Game Boy Color. I haven't played it much, but I believe it's a side story that's canon. I did play that a little bit years ago, and it seemed like... How can I put this? I don't know. Technically a game in the series, yes, but it's not like that was a game that was made reference to in other parts of the series. Wasn't Metroid 2 the game where Samus befriends one of the Metroids or something and changes her perspective on the whole like franchise or something? There was like some big turning point at the end of Metroid 2, even though it was just a Game Boy game. I don't know, but you you raise a good point with Kirby, because Kirby was definitely a Game Boy game in the beginning. And it's not now. So yeah, you're right about that. I don't know. Well played, sir. Let's go. Let's see the comments, because like every good Mecha Menace comment, there's an army of replies to it. Desm, I would also add Bionic Commando to that list. I think it had 2 Game Boy games after the NES version. Well played. Mecha Menace, yep. If we want to make this exercise even more fun, we can think of a game sequels to movies, like how Goonies 2 on the NES is the unofficial sequel to the Goonies movie. Yeah, actually, there actually was a Goonies 1. We just didn't get it in the United States. Desm 101, Gargoyle's Quest. How could we forget that series? That was Mecha Menace, sorry. Desm replies with, good call. Awesome game for sure. I will have to check these out. Bionic Commando was one I never got into. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. Bionic Commando is another game that I know is a beloved game. People love Bionic Commando. I couldn't get down with it quite as much. Because you can't jump. You have to use the swingy arm thing. And it felt weird to me. I don't know. It wasn't a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. It just didn't get that place in my heart that like Contra gets or something like that. Did we do... Is that the rest of what Mecha Menace had? No, he had one more. Can't stand wrestling games. However, throw on some monster or sci-fi skins and I'm in. King of Monsters 1 and 2 are still relatively cheap, $20 or less, and offer Giant Monster v Robot v Spaceman v whatever that's not simply a guy lubed with baby oil wearing a cowboy hat and tassels, and replace the Romper Room stage surrounded by rubber bands with destructible cities and wilderness surrounded by invisible electrified fences. Both games appeared on Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo version of 2 resembles the arcade more and plays like a beat-em-up with a wider array of moves. I will have to check that out. Nothing against it if you're not into wrestling games. It sounds more like you're just not into wrestling. Like the whole wrestling aesthetic doesn't appeal to you, and that makes perfect sense. It's definitely not for everybody. Wrestling to me is like eating corn dogs. You know it's bad for you. It's not good. It's just I'm gonna eat it anyway. Gaming Beast says, when you talked about being a casual gamer, I was thinking of Hip to Be Square by Huey Lewis and the News. Loved that song as a kid because of the melody, but I didn't really get the lyrics. As an adult, I get it now. I agree most of the beat-em-ups are set in either a crime/urban fantasy or superhero setting. Alien Storm and the arcade Bucky O'Hare are 2 that I can think of, in addition to AVP. Question of the Beast: what TV show should be an adventure game, and which one should not? I say Hogan's Heroes would make a great one. I agree. That would make a great adventure game. I think that would make a good modern indie game. Like if somebody just decided to make a Hogan's Heroes game in Adventure Studio or something like that. And the reason I say that is because it would be best in like a politically no-holds-barred scenario where they didn't have to worry about copyright. They could, do whatever, tell whatever story that they wanted to without having to worry about like a board of trustees making sure it's something that they can sell. That's the way the Hogan's Heroes game should be. And I know we'll never get it, but that would be good. One game that shouldn't be a TV show is Maniac Mansion, which actually was a TV show for a couple of episodes, put together by none other than Eugene Levy. That one should not be a TV show, as we found out. One that should, adventure game that should be a TV show. I don't know. I always wanted to see more of the Trilby series, but we got 4 games, and there's no way that would be a good show. But I liked the Trilby series very, very much. One sci-fi adventure game, not sci-fi beat 'em up, but sci-fi adventure game is the second Trilby game, which was 7 Days a Skeptic, where the guy was killing everybody on the spaceship. That's an awesome game. I would in whatever format, I'd like to see more of that mythos personally. Sean, man, so good to hear from you, brother. I hope you're doing well. Hope life's treating you good, and you're playing some video games and taking care of yourself. Last one, we got one from Death Adder who says, base cult of personality intro. Yeah, the guy who made that, and I responded with this in text, but the guy who made that is so good. He's with a little group that runs a joint account that makes covers of chiptune songs. And yeah, really good stuff. So that, and then one other one, also the Reading Rainbow theme song, are set to be on the CME chiptune compilation when I'm able to get that together in about a month or so. And it was spot on to the point where last week's episode actually got copyright claimed, not by the guy who made the chiptune, but the people who made, who own the rights to the actual song. So that's a thing, which is unfortunate. And by the way, it was one of those things where they caught it right away. It's not like somebody actually looked it up and found that. It was algorithm based. So props to the evil overlord for putting ads on my video for that song. Enjoy. And with that, boys and girls, we have done it. That's another episode of Tiger Claw Radio. Join us on the Patreon so you can get early access to the next week's episode, as well as Monday Night Morrowind, where we hang out. Whatever it is you're dealing with this week, whatever you're about to walk into, just keep going. Can't promise it'll turn out okay, but I can promise you the only way to get through it is right through. Like the Kool-Aid Man! Oh yeah! I'm rooting for you guys. I'll see you next week.